Hey gente, ¿cómo están? Soy yo, Creole Lady Marmalade. Bienvenidos a mi canal. Lo siento. Lo siento muchísimo porque yo sé que no he estado subiendo videos y realmente no tengo una buena razón, pero estamos aquí ahora, juntos, ustedes y yo, and that's all that matters. ¿Sí? ¿Sí o sí? Yo quiero hablar de algo muy importante para mí y debería ser importante para ti también si eres Creole o Latino o cualquier persona realmente, pero especialmente si eres Creole o Latino. ¿Por qué estoy hablando en español? Pues estoy hablando en español porque estamos en el mes de herencia hispana. Entonces, yo quiero hablar en español. Pero, por favor, permiten mis errores porque solo hablo algo de español, no puedo hablar con fluidez. Y por eso yo voy a cometer errores. Así es la vida cuando estás aprendiendo una lengua. ¿Sí? Ok. Empecemos. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to just start speaking in English just to make this easier on myself. And so you don't have to keep reading subtitles. Okay, so yes, it is Hispanic Heritage Month, which Hispanic Heritage Month is from September 15th to October 15th. So why did I jump in 2 weeks late to show my excitement? Well, that is because Creole Heritage Month is in October. So the first 2 weeks of October is like Christmas for me because I get Hispanic Heritage Month and Creole Heritage Month rolled into one. So I want to talk about both Hispanic Heritage and Creole Heritage. These are both my favorite MGM groups for obvious reasons. So I want to dive into them both a little bit and kind of talk about their similarities. So if you've been on my channel before, you know that I am from New Orleans. I am Creole. I am mainly like a Black French mix. Pero también yo tengo a mis abuelos que eran de Nicaragua. Entonces, yo tengo sangre española también. Mi bisabuelo era un mestizo de allá. Allá, no sé. Pero sí, yo estoy muy orgullosa de las dos culturas. La gente, la comida, los idiomas, el español, el francés. Ay, bellísima. Yes, I know there is a lawnmower going on outside, but I really don't feel like recording this at a later time. Come on, work with me here. Okay, so yes, Hispanic Heritage, Creole Heritage. I am very happy that both cultures have a month dedicated to the recognition of them, their achievements, their culture, their everything. Of course, Hispanic Heritage Month is gonna be a bigger thing than Creole Heritage Month. I mean, when I turn on Netflix, when I'm on Google, when I go on anywhere, you're seeing stuff about, click to watch, blah, 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 about Hispanic heritage, this and that. But we all know the history behind Louisiana and becoming Americanized and kind of losing a large chunk of that pride and that essence. But for those like me who still have that, it's an exciting time for us. And as I said earlier, the first 2 weeks of October are the most exciting for me because I embrace both cultures, Hispanic heritage, Creole heritage. Now, both my parents are Creole. It's just that my mom's dad is Creole. My mom's mom is half Nicaraguan, half Black. So she's like the Creole Latina, and my dad is Creole. So I'm primarily Creole, but I do have some raíces nicaragüenses también. So, anywho, me aside, let's get into both of those. What I really wanted to kind of do is compare both Creole and Hispanic culture. So, there's many similarities between Louisiana Creoles and Hispanic people, or Latinos in general. I'll say specifically more so Caribbean Latinos or like Brazilians. They would probably be more similar to Louisiana Creoles because both groups are more so mulatto or triracial than mestizo. And I'm gonna give my disclaimer I always give. Yes, we know that Creoles don't always have to be mixed. Not all Creoles are mixed, just like not all Latinos are mixed, but mixed is kind of the idea that you get when you think of both groups. So a lot of Creoles are either mulatto or triracial. I would say mulatto more often than triracial. And Caribbean Latinos and Brazilians, also mulattoes, triracial. I would say they probably have more triracial people than Creoles. And the biggest similarity between Creoles and Hispanic people are that both are actually Latin. So Creoles have Latin roots, not Anglo roots like the rest of America. France actually coined the phrase Latin America and Latinos, and it was in reference to everyone who was of Latin origin, not just Spanish-speaking origin. So over time, when we say Latinos, we tend to think of people from Spanish-speaking countries. But Brazilians are Latino, they speak Portuguese. Haitians are technically Latino. Now, I know that's going to be debated. A lot of Latinos don't want to see them as Latino. A lot of Haitians themselves don't want to see themselves as Latino. So that's, that's between them. But technically, Haitians fall under that. And Louisiana Creoles, we fall under that. But our history is weird because we did eventually become American. But our roots, our original roots, the way we came about the exact same way that Latinos in Latin America came about. And we are of Latin roots. Our original language was French. A lot of Creoles, most of us have grandparents and great-grandparents, their first language was French or Creole, which is a French derivative. So both cultures are culturally and linguistically of Latin roots, whether that be Spanish, French, Portuguese. Louisiana Creoles, ours is mainly French, though a lot of us do have a good bit of Spanish blood as well, because for us, both France and Spain occupied Louisiana at one point. So some of us do have Spanish background, but I would say primarily France had us the longest. Our biggest impact has been France. Most of us, like myself, have French last names. So our main mixture would be, the base would be African French. The Caribbean, African, Spanish, Indigenous, Brazil, African Portuguese, Indigenous. Another similarity between Louisiana Creoles and Latinos is that because we both come from Latin societies, our societies were very lax when it came to racial mixing. And that's also part of the reason why when you think of Creoles and Latinos, you tend to think of an image of a mixed person. And that's because they just mixed so freely that they ended up with these whole mixed MGM populations. But even when you go to the people who aren't mixed, they're still a little bit mixed, because the mixing just happened so much. Even the average white Latino isn't necessarily white by American standards. They might still have 5% African ancestry and 15% indigenous. They might still have little bits of other ancestry, even though they'll be predominantly white. They might be 80% white, but they might have 20%, a little something else. Whereas the average white American does not. People love to say, yeah, blacks have white in them, but whites have black in them too. We weren't mixing like that. No, they don't. On average, the average white American is 100% European. But that exception comes into play with Louisiana. So, with both blacks and whites. So the average, black person in America is going to be 80% or more African. The average white American is going to be 100% European. But Louisiana is always the exception because we had more mixing back in our time. So the average white Louisianian whose family has been in Louisiana since colonization, they're the white people who might have a little splash of black in them. And they have Iberian backgrounds rather than like British, Scottish, Irish. They're typically, French, Spanish, that type of thing. With, they might have a little bit Native American, a little African way down the line. So a white person from Louisiana and a white Latino might still have, 5-10% African indigenous ancestry versus a regular white American who will be 100% European 9 times out of 10. So I'm just saying all this to say Latin America and Louisiana mixed a whole lot, way more freely, so we have a bigger mixed population. And the racial mixing that occurred in Louisiana and Latin America was not always the result of rape. It was often marriage, contractual agreements. some type of full-fledged real relationship that came with perks for that slave woman. And keep in mind, I'm not romanticizing any of these entanglements. I'm pretty sure that the majority of these African and indigenous women didn't have much say-so about being with any of these men. It's just that the lesser of two evils would be the way that the French, Spanish, and Portuguese, especially the Spanish and Portuguese, went about things versus the way that the British did it. And if I were going to be stuck having a mulatto child back in those days, I'd rather be in a society where my mulatto child would have an elevated status and I too would gain some sort of benefit that would make my life just a little bit easier versus being in an American society where my mulatto child would be thrown out into slavery along with me, and it would be regarded as an abomination by both whites and blacks. Whereas in Louisiana and Latin America, the fathers acknowledged their children, they educated them, they oftentimes left them property, gave them their freedom. Sometimes their children owned slaves. That's not so good. So yeah, we're racially similar that way. And I would even say culturally, in terms of like music and zest and liveliness. Like if you, so many people have told me they've gone to New Orleans and they felt like they were in Dominican Republic or Puerto Rico. New Orleans is saucy Caribbean. Like we have a lot of Caribbean influence. We had a lot of Haitian immigrants at one point. So New Orleans has a lot of Caribbean-ness. Like our bounce music has a lot of beats, a lot of fast beats. We talk fast. I feel like the way we speak English would be similar to the way Caribbean Latinos speak Spanish. So, but anywho, yeah, culturally, like our food, we eat spicy food. Like that's kind of a staple in Creole food and Cajun food, like spice. A lot of seasoning, a lot of spice. Also, both Creole and Caribbean food have a lot of West African influence, like gumbo in Louisiana and mofongo in the Caribbean.
The Creole is like the prototype of a melting pot man. He has a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So I think what makes Creole is that you have to recognize that you are part of many ethnicities. You're not totally African American. You're not totally French. You're not totally Spanish. You're a combination of everything. And I think recognizing that diversity is unique because you say, this is who I am. You accept me the way I am. I have no control over the fact that I have 7 ethnic groups in 3 generations.
We are mixture of Caucasians and Africans that's in the family, both on mother's side of the family, on my dad's side of the family. So you might say we are thoroughbred Creoles.
Another thing that Latinos and old school Louisiana Creoles had in common was the recognition of and immense pride in their multiracial composition. A composition of multiple races and ethnicities that came together to create a whole new separate group. Both were very adamant about being their own new race. Very. Both were, I'm not black, I'm not white. Don't call me any of that. I'm a whole new breed, a whole new thing. And in Latin America, that was able to continue to, that's why Latinos today have their whole own identity. You don't look at a Latino and go, okay, so you got more black in you, so I'm gonna say you black. You got more white in you, so I'm gonna say you white. You don't do that with Latinos. You let them be Latino. It's its own separate thing, and that's what Creoles had at one point, and that's what they tried to cling on to. And if you talk to older Creoles, they still have it in their head. Like my great grandma back in the day, if you would have asked her what she was, she would say she is Creole. She was not going to say black, white, not Creole, period. And in Latin America, that was celebrated. In the United States, once Louisiana became part of the United States, that was frowned upon. And if you were mixed, you would then, no, ain't no Creole, ain't no mix. You just need to say you're black. Even if you were 75% European, you got to say you're black. And, but, prior to that, and even after that, like on paper, yeah, they were saying they were black, but for a long time, Creole still identified as their own thing. Again, identifying as Creole wasn't always a racial thing. For some, it was a preferred ethnic identifier. And this goes for Latinos as well. For the mixed Creoles, it was not only an ethnic identifier, but a way to distinguish themselves as a separate new mixed race group of people, separate from both black and white. And for the non-mixed Creoles, it was a cultural identifier and used as a way to distinguish themselves from an American identity. Both mixed and non-mixed Latinos use their Latin identity in the same way, but with the added notion of nationalism. Latinos also pride themselves on being regarded specifically as Puerto Rican, Mexican, Cuban. They have a national identity and a national pride, as well as their overall Hispanic or Latin pride and mixed identity for the mixed ones. So, to me, when I look at Creole culture and Latino culture, they're actually a lot more similar than Creole culture and American culture. Creole people are or the heavily mixed Creole people are typically mistaken for Hispanic or Latino, and that is because we're racially pretty much the same thing. It leaves us with the same look, basically. And a lot of Creoles will be like, oh, why everybody think I'm Spanish? I'm black, I'm not Spanish. Not realizing they are looking at you and seeing your mixed ancestry that is very obviously there. And when we see someone with a mixed ancestry that has an Iberian look to it, they see that and they associate it to Latinos. And that is because it's the same mixture. So, or virtually the same mixture. So that's why we look alike. Our cultures are very similar. Back in the day, Creoles, they were just like Latinos with that off the Richter pride, that off the charts pride. And that's what both Latinos and at least old school Creoles had. Today it's kind of a mess. It's not exactly the same, but the ones like me, I have it. That pride and that mixture of cultures and that language. Like, I love knowing, even though I don't speak French, but I do have a pride in knowing that my great-grandparents spoke it and my dad's mom spoke it. So just knowing that, the average American, they don't have that history unless they have recent immigrant grandparents or something. But, an American who's been in America since the beginning of time, everyone spoke English for the most part. So I love knowing that my history is a little different and that if I wanted to tap in and learn French, I would be speaking the language that my family spoke not too many years ago. Latinos, they come from Spanish-speaking backgrounds. We both come from Latin backgrounds that are just different than the U.S. And I think it's dope. I think it's pretty cool. I think it makes us unique. And I just wish more Creoles would, embrace that, realize that. I don't think a lot of Creoles even know their history, but know that, realize it, embrace it, love it, know that it makes you different and you could stand out if you wanted to. And yeah, so I kind of went on a tangent, but those are the similarities between Latinos and Creoles. Oh my gosh, how could I forget? Probably the biggest similarity between Louisiana Creoles and Latinos is Catholicism. Both societies were notoriously Catholic. That is kind of a key component for any Latin society, is Catholicism. Now, me personally, I am not Catholic, but I'm not sure how prevalent that is today with Creoles. I know it's still super prevalent with Latinos. But yeah, so Catholicism and also architecture. We have so much Spanish architecture, especially in New Orleans, like the French Quarter, even though it's called the French Quarter. It is Spanish architecture. So yeah. I hope a lot of Creoles embrace the fact that it's Creole Heritage Month, learn their history during this month, take notes from Latinos. We know that they have their racism and their issues too, but still, take some notes in pride, in multiracial pride, and and go and learn French and go and keep up your own language. Now, for me, I know you're like, well, you don't speak French. First of all, I'm going to. And second, I am part Hispanic, and so I am at least speaking Spanish, so I'm doing something. A lot of mixed people aren't doing anything in that regard, and I feel like you should learn at least one of those languages, like learn something. But I will, for sure, get around to learning French because I just think Louisianians in general, Creoles, Cajuns, all of us need to learn French. I feel like when people come to Louisiana, they should know that they just stepped into a francophone area. When they go to the stores, they should hear us in there speaking French to each other. It just should be, like in Quebec. You go to Quebec, you're in Quebec. Like, I feel like people, once they cross that border from Texas to Louisiana or Mississippi to Louisiana, they need to start seeing and hearing French just out and about in the street. So we do need to learn that, to me. And I think that would really solidify our unique identity. Once you put a language on it, people, they leave it alone. And they, okay, it's foreign, it's different, all right. You know, and that's what Latinos have, that Creoles need to get it together on. But anywho, yes, so I hope you have enjoyed my video. Go out and enjoy yourself. I know there's festivals and parades and stuff everywhere for Hispanic Heritage Month, certainly. But I think in Louisiana, we might have a thing or two going on for Creole heritage. So tap into both of those. Even if you're not Hispanic or Creole, it's good food. If you go to any of those festivals or anything, there's going to be good food. Why not go? There's going to be beautiful people to look at. Hey, I said it. Enjoy yourself. Go out, learn a little Spanish, learn a little French. Dive in. It's fun. It's beautiful. It's cultural. Get cultured. But yes, thank you so much for watching my video. And I will start uploading more. And I'm going to see you guys next time. Au revoir.